Welcome again to this study time for the Gospel of Mark. And my thanks again to you as teachers who are viewing this video as you prepare to teach your class. We are at a story in the Gospel of Mark that's similar to one we looked at before, when the disciples are crossing the sea and they encounter a storm. And in some ways it's a similar story, but this has a twist to it. This time Jesus isn't in the boat with them. This time in the story Jesus is away praying by himself, and they are struggling in the storm. And so my suggestion to you as you lead this discussion is to maybe ask a question of folks who have sailed or have done windsurfing or any kind of sport like that, have to share some memorable experiences of while doing any of those things, just as a way of people being able to describe what the feelings were like when something went well or something didn't go well while they were out on a lake or in the sea. The story, though, carries forward then. This again is a nighttime story. Jesus in the evening goes up to the mountain, sends them off across the lake, and then he's praying and they are beginning to struggle in the storm. And what's interesting about this story is Jesus sees them while they're struggling and doesn't immediately respond to them. So the question that I would encourage you to ask of the folks as they're looking at this story is, what do you think this part of the story might say to us about Jesus, about God caring or not caring for those who are his followers who are struggling? What might be the significance of Jesus praying and seeing them struggling, but not necessarily going right away? And there might be some ideas that people would have about that, such as one idea that came to my mind as I was reading this story is maybe he was trying to teach them how to be on their own, so to speak, like a parent helping a teenager to struggle with a problem that they have, and the parent is maybe ready to give the answers, but they're going to say, no, you try to work it through. Is that what Jesus is doing here? That might be a question to ask. But Jesus finally, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, according to the time frame, he comes to them on the water. Now again, it's the middle of the night, it's dark, it's stormy, it's pitch black, and they see Jesus, and of course this whole idea of ghosts and night and scary things, the disciples have all these sort of superstitions flowing through their minds. And they see Jesus, but they don't recognize him right away. But the scripture says that he intended to pass by them. And what does it mean that Jesus intended to go past them? Here again, does it mean that he was unconcerned? Does it mean that he was concerned but had something else he needed to do that was more important than what they were dealing with? But the question I would ask is, could it be a way of describing his concern and a sign of his caring presence? Now, you might say that sounds ridiculous, but with your class, I would encourage you to look at a story in the Old Testament, Exodus chapter 33, because really the phrase pass by them or intending to go past them, it is rooted in an Old Testament term that is translated in the Septuagint, meaning the appearance of God, or an epiphany, or when God passes by. And the story in the Old Testament of Exodus is a telling one, because that story is of Moses, and Moses is asking God, how am I going to get into the promised land with these people? And in the process, he says, God, unless you go with us, we're never going to make it. And so God says, listen, I will pass by you. You go, I'm going to put you in a cleft of a rock, and then I'm going to pass by, and you're going to know my presence. And so as we think about this story and that Exodus story, I think you'll find that this idea of God passing by isn't passing by as I'm going to leave you alone by yourself, but passing by as my presence will come to be with you, and that could engender some more conversation. Of course, the disciples see him then recognize him, and he says, I am here, don't be afraid. And of course, it comes back to the same question. What helps you to experience God's presence in difficult experiences? What keeps you from believing and trusting in God's presence? And in what situation in life do you need to hear Jesus' words, don't be afraid? Blessings as you continue to teach and guide your class.